a log, or a forest, a pond, or the ocean. These are just some of the ecosystems found in nature. An ecosystem is a functional and stable unit where all living organisms interact among themselves and with the surrounding physical environment, leading to a flow of energy and nutrients. There is great variation in the size of different ecosystems. In fact, we can consider the Earth or the biosphere as a giant ecosystem composed of small and large ecosystems. However, since it is difficult for us to study such a huge ecosystem in one go, we divide it into smaller ecosystems for convenience. Ecosystems are usually classified as natural and artificial. Natural ecosystems exist naturally in nature and function all by themselves. These ecosystems are further classified as terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Forests, deserts, and grasslands are some terrestrial ecosystems, while the ocean, lakes, and wetlands are some aquatic ecosystems. Unlike natural ecosystems, artificial ecosystems are created and maintained by human beings. Some artificial ecosystems are croplands, orchards, gardens, and aquariums. The structure of different ecosystems also varies greatly and involves the composition of a biological community in terms of number, biomass, life history, population, and distribution of species. The structure of an ecosystem also involves the availability and distribution of several non-living factors such as nutrients, water, and climatic and physical conditions. In other words, the two major components in any ecosystem are abiotic or non-living components and biotic or living components. There is a continuous interaction between the abiotic and biotic components of an ecosystem, resulting in a physical structure which forms a characteristic for each type of ecosystem. Also, an ecosystem has several plant and animal species, and their identification and enumeration gives us the composition of the species. The vertical distribution of different species occupying different levels is known as stratification. For instance, in a forest ecosystem, the trees occupy the top vertical strata or layer, followed by shrubs, herbs, and grasses. Two main processes occur in an ecosystem. 1. There is a continuous cycling of nutrients between living and non-living components, and 2. There is a continuous input of energy from an ultimate source, which is mainly the sun. This energy is tapped by the producers and is passed to other trophic levels in the ecosystem. Generally, the producers occupy the first trophic level at the base, followed by primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. Now, let us learn about the functions of an ecosystem. All ecosystems, big or small, perform four major functions, namely productivity, decomposition, energy flow, and nutrient cycling. To better understand the structure and functions of an ecosystem, let us take the example of a small pond, which is a fairly self-sufficient system. Now, some of the abiotic components in this pond include water, rocks, soil, sunlight, and dissolved inorganic and organic substances such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen. It also includes dissolved inorganic salts in the form of nitrates, chlorides, and phosphates. Like abiotic components, there are several biotic components in this pond. These include autotrophic components like plants, phytoplanktons, and photosynthetic bacteria found both floating and submerged in water. The biotic components also include heterotrophic components like small and big fish, crustaceans, amphibians, beetles, and zooplanktons. Some of these heterotrophs are herbivorous, while others are carnivorous. The decomposers also fall under heterotrophic components and include several species of fungi and bacteria, usually found in abundance at the bottom of the pond. Now, in this pond, autotrophs such as algae produce their own food by converting inorganic material into organic compounds using the sun's energy. These algae are consumed by small fish, which in turn are consumed by bigger fish. Here, both the small and big fish are heterotrophs. Thus, autotrophs prepare their own food, and these autotrophs are consumed by heterotrophs. Thus, the functions of productivity and energy flow are clearly seen in this ecosystem. When the algae and fish in the pond die, the function of decomposition takes place. That is, the decomposers decay and mineralize the dead matter and release them back into the sediments and water, which are then reused by autotrophs. Thus, there is a unidirectional flow of energy from the lower to the higher trophic levels, with substantial amounts of energy being dissipated in the form of heat to the environment at various levels. Moreover, this example also demonstrates the function of nutrient or mineral cycling, as we can see nutrients flowing from autotrophs to heterotrophs and then to decomposers and back to autotrophs in a cyclic manner. In addition, the functioning of the entire pond is regulated by abiotic factors such as length of day, temperature, solar input, dissolved organic and inorganic materials, to name a few. Thus, the structure of ecosystems varies greatly, and its functioning depends on rate of nutrient and energy flow, and also the interrelation between living organisms and the environment, thereby forming a self-sustaining system. Did you know that if decomposers did not exist, the earth would be covered by a layer of dead flies about 20 feet deep within a month? Decomposers play a very important role in keeping our environment clean. They break down complex organic matter and convert it into simple inorganic substances like water, carbon carbon dioxide, and nutrients. This natural process is known as decomposition. The raw material for decomposition is the detritus, which comprises dead and decaying plant remains such as leaves, branches, flowers, roots, and dead animal remains, including fecal matter. Decomposition involves a series of important steps, namely fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, and mineralization. Of these steps, fragmentation, leaching, and catabolism occur simultaneously on the detritus. During fragmentation, the detritus is broken down into smaller particles by detritivores, which are organisms that feed on and break down dead plant or animal matter while returning essential nutrients to the environment. Some examples of detritivores include fungi, insects like dung flies, and terrestrial worms such as earthworms and millipedes. During leaching, inorganic nutrients that are soluble in water drain into the soil and get precipitated as unavailable salts. While during catabolism, the detritus is further acted upon by bacteria and fungi and is degraded into simpler inorganic substances by the action of their enzymes. The next step of decomposition is humification, where the detritus gets converted into a dark, amorphous substance called humus. Humus is extremely resistant to microbial action and thus has a very slow rate of decomposition. Moreover, it is also very colloidal in nature and therefore serves as a source of nutrients. Finally, during mineralization, the last step of decomposition, certain microbes act on the humus, degrade it, and release inorganic nutrients into the soil. Both humification and mineralization occur inside the soil. However, the process of decomposition is affected by several factors. It is primarily an oxygen-requiring process, and the chemical composition of the detritus, along with climatic factors such as temperature and soil moisture, affect the rate of decomposition. For a particular temperature, the rate of decomposition is slower if the detritus is rich in substances like lignin and chitin, and is faster if the detritus is rich in nitrogen and water-soluble substances like sugars. Climatic conditions such as temperature and soil moisture affect the activity of microbes, thus affecting the rate of decomposition. That is, the rate of decomposition is faster when the temperature is warm and the environment is moist, whereas low temperature and lack of oxygen favors anaerobiosis, which slows the process of decomposition and leads to a build-up of organic materials. Therefore, the process of decomposition helps to recycle the nutrients required for the very existence of life. The amount of biomass varies from one ecosystem to another. Biomass is the mass of living organisms or the organic matter in a unit area of an ecosystem at a given time. It is expressed in terms of mass per unit area, that is, gram per meter square. If we compare a forest desert, or tundra ecosystem, we find that the biomass of the forest ecosystem is greater than the other two. This is due to the presence of a large number of primary producers in the forest. Primary producers are organisms that can produce biomass from inorganic substances. They typically include photosynthetically active organisms such as plants, cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, and other unicellular organisms. During photosynthesis, plants use chlorophyll to fix inorganic substances such as water and carbon dioxide into organic substances such as glucose in the presence of sunlight, which acts as the main source of energy. So the light energy of the sun is converted into chemical energy of glucose or sugars. The glucose thus produced is converted into starch for storage in plants, or may be combined with other nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus or sulfur to produce other complex molecules such as proteins or nucleic acids, and is stored as biomass. Therefore, the amount of biomass produced per unit area by plants through photosynthesis is called primary production. Is expressed in terms of weight per unit area. That is, gram per meter square, or energy produced per unit area. That is, kilocalorie per meter square. The rate of primary production is called primary productivity. In other words, primary productivity is the amount of biomass produced per unit area and per unit time by plants during photosynthesis. To compare the productivity of different ecosystems, it is expressed in terms of weight per unit area and time. That is, gram per meter square per year, or energy produced per unit area and time. That is, kilocalories per meter square per year. The primary productivity of an ecosystem is dependent on the plant species inhabiting the area, and several other factors such as the photosynthetic capacity of plants and availability of nutrients. As a result, it varies from one ecosystem to another. Primary productivity can be categorized as gross primary productivity, or GPP, and net primary productivity, or NPP. GPP is the total energy fixed by primary producers as biomass through photosynthetic activity per unit area per unit time. A fraction of this GPP is used by plants during respiration to meet their energy requirements. This is known as respiration losses and is denoted as R. Now, if respiration losses are subtracted from GPP, net primary productivity is obtained, which is